Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. Even as I am speaking this morning, an offensive is taking place by the Israeli army into Gaza City. Gaza City is suggested by the Israelis is the last real fortress held by Hamas, and they are determined to destroy that fortress. Let me explain that for Israel, it is a war of survival. Hamas, in their attack almost 2 years ago on October the 7th, breached a basic concept that the Israelis feared, and that was an attack from the borders that would create havoc and slaughter. Make no mistake that what happened on October the 7th was a traumatic moment in Israel. I would suggest as traumatic as September 11th was for the United States of America, when we were attacked by terror. There is no doubt that the Israelis are going to pursue the Hamas forces wherever they are. The tragedy of what is happening to the people of Gaza is the responsibility, foursquare, in my judgment, of Hamas. Hamas's actions, their continued attempts to attack Israel, including an attack last week in Jerusalem, which they didn't claim responsibility for, but which they supported fully, simply indicates that Hamas has one single goal, and that is the destruction of Israel, and yes, the destruction of Jews. As a result, as the high holiday season for the Jewish community begins next week, there is no doubt that security will be stepped up in synagogues and Jewish centers throughout the United States, Canada, and of course Europe, indeed throughout the world. Hamas's war is not just a war against Israel. It is also a war against Jews. It is a war against civilization itself. Now, there are those who will say, but look at the price that is being paid. And my answer is, you're right. It is a terrible price. It is one which we must mourn, because no one wants to see this kind of destruction anywhere in the world. And yet, the world remained silent when Israel was attacked on October 7th. There was not a demand for the release of the hostages, nor was there a condemnation of Hamas as a terrorist organization. And now a word about American foreign policy. I have many differences with Donald Trump, as I have articulated here many times. But when it comes to Israel and the Middle East, Donald Trump is spot on. The idea that terror could triumph is rejected by the president, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said it best in his visit to Israel this week. He indicated the steadfast support of the United States of America for Israel in its efforts to secure its borders and to secure its future. This, to me, is a vital issue, but it's pushed out of the headlines too often by so many other events that take place in the world. I've talked about Ukraine and the tragedy taking place there, and yet there seems not to be the attention which there ought to be being paid to what is happening in Ukraine. The tragedy there is overwhelming as well. One thing I think we all understand: war has not been banished from our world, nor has terror, whether it is a terrorist organization like Hamas or state terror like what is happening in Russia. Can you imagine in Russia that we now face a situation where Vladimir Putin, a murderer, no doubt about it, a man who deservedly so has been indicted for murder, he is unchallenged. He is the leader of Russia. In a normal world, the world would have dealt with Russia. But this is not a normal world. The nuclear threat is real, and Russia has nuclear weapons. And to some who ask the question why the United States worked with Israel when it came to the Iranian nuclear development, it is because we understood that the threat of a nuclear Iran was real and genuine to the West. None of what I'm saying now should particularly surprise anyone. But the simple truth is, we live in a very dangerous world. I have chosen today to focus on foreign policy because foreign policy is the job of the President of the United States. Let me point out that since the administration of Richard Nixon, foreign policy has been run out of the White House. Who is Secretary of State doesn't really matter, because the Secretary of State doesn't make foreign policy. The job of the Secretary of State is to do what the President dictates the foreign policy of this country will be. Let me point out, and I do it respectfully, that Marco Rubio is not just Secretary of State. He is National Security Advisor to the President. Not since Henry Kissinger, when he served as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor to the President, have we seen this consolidation of authority and power. And yet, we know from whence the power flows. It flows from the White House. It is the White House which makes policy, not the Secretary of State. It is the White House that decides what we will do and will not do in the world today. Looking at the Far East, we know that the Chinese government, a communist government, would still like to seize Taiwan. And interestingly enough, there is a letter to the editor in this morning's San Francisco Chronicle from the head of public affairs at the Chinese consulate here in the city, making clear that Taiwan will never be recognized as an independent nation, and indeed pointing out that Taiwan is, in their view, a part of China. There is no question about the fact that foreign policy is going to be the singular issue which will determine where we go in the world. And let's be clear, the United Nations was founded on a vision that it would be the enforcer of peace. The United Nations has frankly proved almost useless in that regard. The dream that we would have a world that learned the lesson of the Second World War, well, that seems to have faded. It was Harold E. Stassen, one of the primary authors of the Charter of the United Nations, who on its 40th anniversary suggested that war in the world, a third world war, had been prevented by the United Nations. If Governor Stassen were alive today, I wonder what he would say about the UN, its actions, and the world. It is a dangerous world that we live in, and how we proceed, what happens next, whether it is in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in China, no matter where we are in the world, let us be clear that when we elect a president, we are not just electing a domestic leader. The President of the United States is the leader of the most powerful nation in the world, and what we do and how we do it is critical. I will be watching today with great care to see what happens in the Gaza offensive by the Israelis. And one more point. Robert Redford passed away this morning. I'm only raising it because he became something of a cultural icon. And frankly, my favorite Redford movie was The Candidate. If you've never seen it, take a look. This is John Rothman. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which, of course, is our goal. You can interact with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, directly email me. Happy to hear from you. Indeed, I enjoy the stimulation. And to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this show, thank you so much, Gogo, for all that you do. I am John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.